What are the woke ideologies at play in the minor-attracted people movement? Be inclusive to everyone, even if they want to rape your children.
Miriam Hain, a medical student from Germany, is presenting her controversial paper on the subject of, quote, why our perception of pedophilia has to change. Give it a listen.
According to current research, pedophilia is an unchangeable sexual orientation, just like, for example, heterosexuality. No one chooses to be a pedophile. No one can cease being one. The difference between pedophilia and other sexual orientations is that living out this sexual orientation will end in a disaster. Right now, most of us feel discomfort when we think about this scenario. And most of us feel discomfort when we think about pedophiles. But just like pedophiles, we're not responsible for our feelings. We do not choose them. But we are responsible for our actions. And we must make a decision. It is in our responsibility to reflect and to overcome our negative feelings about pedophiles and to treat them with the same respect we treat other people with. We should accept that pedophiles are people.
Hey, I'm a queer teacher. I'm gender fluid. I am also a witch. I would come out to my students every October on National Coming Out Day. I would use that as an opportunity for my students to learn how to receive somebody coming out to them. I ended up telling my students that I was gay, so they would ask me if I was, because I kind of alluded that I was. So I kind of let them wonder and ponder on it. So instead of teaching social studies today, they just asked me a whole bunch of questions about being gay. Let's talk about gender roles and talking about them in the classroom.
Talking about gender is not something that's out of the realm for children.
Research says that there is no age too young to talk about pretty much anything.
Kids as young as 3 and 4 are actually aware of their gender identity.
If they know about it, they're ready to learn about it.
Also very aware of who they like and who they don't like. They're very much ready for these topics and are way more accepting than adults when it comes to discussing these topics.
You're gonna give me my fucking money back.
Excuse me, sir. There's a young man in here.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
I can call the police if you'd like me to. You need to settle down.
You need to settle down and mind your business, okay? Ma'am, once again, ma'am.
I said both of you.
No, you said sir. Once again, it's ma'am.
I actually said both of you guys. It was general.
Right beforehand, you fucking said sir.
Sir? Okay.
Motherfucker, take it outside. If you want to call me sir again, I will show you a fucking sir.
I apologize.
Motherfucker.
I apologize now.
You are harassing me! Are you not nothing? I'm a woman being followed by a man who's not a journalist. You are fired.
I thought you were a dude. Oh, my bad.
It says it right on my seat.
I didn't know that. Sorry, sir. Ma'am, I mean. Ma'am.
Get the out of here! Get the out of here!
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
No. Back it up. No. No, get away from her. Get away from her. She said it more than once.
Intentionally.
He just misgendered this woman, sir!
Insensitive to pedophiles to call them pedophiles? Of course it is, because now the left is trying to normalize pedophilia. Welcome to our special report on minor-attracted people. I literally want to throw up in my mouth right now. I have to act like it's normal to normalize pedophilia. My life.
The professor, Dr. Alan Walker, centers around their argument that not everyone who is attracted to children will abuse children.
It isn't actually a choice, so people are just born with this condition.
In an interview with the Prostasia Foundation, Walker said the term minor attracted people, or MAPS, should be used to describe people who are attracted to children.
It's less stigmatizing than other terms like pedophile. A lot of people, when they hear the term pedophile, they automatically assume that it means a sex offender. And that isn't true, and it leads to a lot of misconceptions about attractions toward minors.
Professor Pedophile went on to explain that the word is stigmatizing to them. Yes, the word does stigmatize them into being accurately identified as what they are. A dangerous threat to children. And of course, when you're trying to get away with a heinous crime, it's pretty inconvenient to be accurately identified. In fact, murderers are stigmatized too, aren't they? I think we should demand that people stop using that term and start referring to them as life-taking people.
My classroom is one of the gayest places probably on the planet.
Most days of the week, I come to school in stilettos so I can create an explicitly queer space for all of my students.
Everything is completely covered in rainbows. I've got flags everywhere. I've got queer literature.
Parents might complain, and there's actually a way to be really sneaky about supporting specifically queer students. Dropping a pink triangle somewhere in your room makes a huge difference because kids look for that.
The charge recently to normalize pedophiles is Alan Walker, an assistant professor at Old Dominion University. Ellen went viral, not in a good way, for releasing a video saying the word pedophile should not be used to refer to people who are attracted to children. Yes, God forbid we use a word for its intended meaning. Ellen advocates that people replace the word pedophile with minor attracted people, or MAPS.
Recently we started wearing pronoun pins, and the kids get to pick a new pronoun pin. We have some that pick like she, her every single day, and we have some that change it up.
And I just double check with them if I call home what name they want, what pronouns they want, because a lot of them will just use their given name and their given pronouns. So just double check that.
You should know Professor Minor Attracted Pedophile People isn't alone in this very progressive movement. There's many in it. F*** my life. A known figure in the movement, Noah Belinsky, tweeted, "Pedophiles are essentially a stigmatized group. Certain people get designated as deviants. People hate them." This just in! Protect your children! Also cool to see Twitter even verified his account. Great job, Twitter.
I like to avoid gendered language when I talk to my students. My students really like guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I even refer to them as different animals, just to keep it light and fun.
Say that pre-K through third grade are not ready for such topics is actually internalized homophobia and transphobia.
Alan Walker, whose pronouns are they, them, also wrote a book entitled A Long Dark Shadow, Minor Attracted People and Their Pursuit of Dignity. In the book, they advocates for pedophilia acceptance. Who the f*** is they? Is Alan multiple people? Does he have schizophrenia? I don't think they does. They, them, their professor claims that pedophile behavior can be moral, and thus the term minor attracted people should be used to be more inclusive to pedophiles. I guess they need a safe space to be dangerous to children in. Well, what them doesn't know is there's already a place built specifically to be very inclusive to pedophiles. It's called prison.
The thing is these things are so addictive, and they're designed to be addictive. But just keep that concept in your head, or that kind of that idea of a evolved front brain, an animal back brain, if you like, and then connections between. Now, as I'm showing you, areas of this are being damaged, and there's what we call a dissociation, a disconnect, an unhinging of these things. You don't want that. You want these frontal areas to be in control of this animal brain. You don't want it the other way around. Well, now, there's loads of research on gaming, don't get me wrong, and there's people who say, it's very beneficial because you can do X, Y, Z, and I understand that, but you cannot ignore what it also does, which I'm about to describe. And also, you cannot ignore the results of this, because we're seeing them now playing out through society. You've only got to go into a school, you've only got to look at kids and see how many special needs classes there are. You can't tell me that I grew up in the 60s that we had exactly the same problem then, because we didn't, and I'll explain why, and further explain why. So keep this idea of dissociation, because what frequent game playing does, and game playing doesn't mean a hardcore game. It means your kid on the iPad poking away while you're making a cup of tea and cleaning and doing stuff, and they're playing, and everyone does it. Frequent game playing decreases the frontal lobe activity. It decreases the human aspect, as we're just describing. And they did a study in just 7 days of these horrible violent game playing. It leads to, once again, depressed activity of the frontal lobe, and that key part that bridges the front brain and the back brain, if you like, or the emotional side, the anterior cingulate cortex, which I mentioned before. So once again, you have very simple, very straightforward research that shows these are being affected. I think you were interviewing Max Egan, and you were talking about all various things, transhumanism and all the rest of that. And as I was doing this, about 1:30 in the morning, an alert popped up on my computer. And it was I thought, I'm on holiday, but so what, I'll do a bit of work. And something popped up, and there was a document, and I've not seen this document mentioned anywhere in the last 6 months, and I've no idea why. It was released by the White House. And the document's title was A Federal Vision for Future Computing and Nanotechnology-Inspired Grand Challenge. Now, it was all about AI technology and intelligence. And now, I'm going to go into this very briefly, but the reason why I link this in, I find it an incredible coincidence, an almost unbelievable coincidence, that the only time in man's known history when man itself at both ends is losing the ability for cognition, with our children with all the problems and the dysfunctions and the autism, and with our elderly with neurodegenerative disease and Alzheimer's, which is rampant now, as cognition and those human qualities are being wiped out in us, trillions of dollars are being spent creating it through artificial intelligence and modern day robots.